Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Backstage. First of all, to all the loyalists, thanks for coming back and seeing what we have going on this time around. It's going to be fun, isn't it? And for all you new people, welcome. I think you just joined a family that you'll want to be a part of from now on. Um, Things are crazy. Yeah. Each time we think we got it tied down, what's going to happen? I know it doesn't happen. Very selfishly, somebody asked me the other day, they said, why do you keep doing these backstages? Because I get to have the chance to hang out with my heroes when I get to do it. So it's supposed to be work, but I ought to pay consumer tuition for having the opportunity to visit with these people. Today's guest is Mr. Ray Cramer. Mr. Cramer was the director of bands at Indiana University for many years, most of his career, and Musashino Academy of Music. I think this is 3 decades now. He's celebrating time with them, and was president of the Midwest Clinic and president of the American Bandmasters Association. And I could take the whole time to share his many accolades. But the best part is that all pales in comparison to what a great human being is. So, Mr. Cramer, welcome to Backstage.
Thank you, Tim. It's nice to be a part of it today. I've enjoyed the broadcast myself.
Been watching it? Yeah?
I have been.
Great. So what's going on in Colorado Springs right now?
Right now in Colorado Springs, there's not much going on, except that my wife and I are doing a lot of walking every day. We average about 5 miles a day. And so we're staying healthy. We're trying to stay away from any place that, since we're in that demographic of being the most susceptible to the virus going around, we're trying to stay away from those kind of situations that we could get caught up in some kind of an infection.
Yeah. My doctor the other day was telling me about how older people were more susceptible and so forth. And I said, well, that's kind of good to know. And he goes, no, you're old. So
Yeah. Well, Tim, you're not as old as we are, but that's okay.
Certainly, I mean, you live a schedule that's unbelievable, but can you just give us a brief, crow's nest view of your career, because it's been so stellar? I think everybody needs to know. I get to know. But
well, let's see. My career started in my first teaching job was in a little town, Bardolph, Illinois. In 1961, I was still a senior in college, but that school hired seniors every year to conduct their entire instrumental music program. And so I was doing that and doing student teaching and finishing my degree all at the same time. But as I look back on that experience over the years, it really set a tone for expectation and my whole mannerism of how I was going to work with young people. So it sort of set me in the right direction in that very first year, which has benefited me over the years since then. Then I went to grad school at the University of Iowa. Then I taught in 2 schools in Iowa, West Liberty, Iowa, which is just a few miles out of Iowa City, and then over to very southwest Iowa in Harlan, Iowa for 3 years. And then we moved to the largest high school I've ever been involved in, which had 3,600 students in 3 grades in Parma, Ohio. And had 180 students in those 3 grades, divided into 2 90-piece, evenly balanced concert bands. And out of those 180 kids, about 160 of them all studied privately with professional musicians in the Cleveland area, including the Cleveland Symphony, Oberlin, Baldwin-Wallace, etc. So that was quite an experience. And then from there to Indiana University in the fall of 1969, and I was there for 36 years.
Was the connection with Mr. Ebbs at Iowa when you went to graduate school and then over to IU?
That's correct. Yes, he was the director of bands at Iowa at the time, and I had met Mr. Ebbs when I was an undergrad student at Western Illinois, and I heard the Iowa Symphony Band do a concert in Burlington, Iowa, and I thought, man, that's a band like I've never heard before, and at some point I want to be a part of that band. So when it came time to select grad school, there was no question about where I wanted to go. Of course, it also helped that I got a fellowship at Iowa in composition, believe it or not. That didn't last long, Tim. I found out that I had no talent. I wasn't going to make a living composing, that's for sure. But yeah, so Mr. Ebbs was my tremendous mentor to me, both at Iowa and then at IU when I went there.
So he handpicked you to go to Indiana University, yeah?
Well, let's just say that he had a big hand in it, because he told me about an opening was going to be for the assistant job when I was teaching at Parma Senior in the spring, and that was in 1969. And his mother lived in the Cleveland area at the time, and that's where he grew up. So he said, I think I'm going to have an assistant job open. Would you be interested? And I, of course, said, well, of course I would. That's always been my goal, to teach in college. So when he finally let me know that it was going to be officially open, that's when I wrote for an application. And I think I was part of 3 people that actually interviewed. There were actually 2 positions open at the same time in the band department.
I love it. Tell us about the affiliation, the connection with Musashino. I love this.
Well, this is when I was at Indiana and teaching some undergrad courses, I had come across some vinyl discs of recording of that band. At the time, it was being conducted by a German conductor that had been there for a few years. And so I knew about the band and the quality of the players. In 1984, we took the Indiana University Symphonic Band to Japan on a 16-day tour to play at a joint convention of the ABA and the JBA convention in Tokyo. And so our first rehearsal in 1984 was at Musashino Academy of Music. And all the guest conductors, Japanese guest conductors, came to conduct my band at that rehearsal at Musashino. Little did I know that 6 years later, I would get invited to be a guest conductor at that school. And that came about because the conductor of the orchestra at the time at Musashino was a good friend. His name was Robert Burt, who was the conductor of the orchestra and the chair of the music department at Valparaiso at the time.
Okay.
And I had met Bob before that. He was a fine euphonium player as a young student, played under all the greats like Ravelli and Hinesley and Falcone. But the president of the university wanted to expand the number of people that came to be exposed to their Japanese students from America, their wind ensemble. And he recommended me to the president in 1990. So that was my first experience. And I accepted right away, knowing the background and what I had heard on those vinyl discs, thinking this might be a one-time opportunity. So, and the invitation is for a full semester. You go for 3 months. And I was thinking, well, okay, you have a one-time shot. So here I am 30 years later, and I'm still going.
Did you have any idea, Mr. Cramer, at that time when you were doing that semester, that this was going to be a 3-decade tenure plus?
No, I had no idea at all. And so, you know, when they called me back, you know, a year or so later to come again in 1992, I jumped at the chance to go again. And so then it sort of became a situation where the president asked me to begin recommending other American conductors to come, and because I couldn't go every semester, obviously, I still had a job at IU. Mm-hmm. So my first suggestion was Ben Cresciuto from Minnesota, because he had just retired from Minnesota. Okay. So Frank and I, the 2 of us, rotated for the next several years through 1996. And then Frank got really sick and passed away. Yes. In fact, he didn't even finish the semester. He had to go home. So the president then asked me to recommend it. Well, at the same time, the next 2 people that I recommended was Ken Bloomquist, mm-hmm. Michigan State, who had just given up that program, and Don Wilcox at West Virginia. So the three of us, and then finally the other person that came in, there were four of us rotating at the time. That was Russ Coleman from Central Missouri. So the four of us did that for several years until health-wise, both Ken and Don and Russ too had to give it up. But anyway, that's how it all sort of developed.
I think Mr. Coleman was the director the year you brought him to Midwest with you.
Yes, Ken, Don
Yeah.
Wilcox, and Russ. That was in 2006. But the first time we went was in '95. That was just with Ben and I. Ben Cresciuto and I were the two of us did it then.
Well, I mean, that group was stunning. I mean, beyond stunning. And you can't believe that young players like that had that level of maturity. So
yeah, and they weren't graduate students. They were all undergrad students. Wow. Just juniors and seniors, basically. And that's the way it is yet today.
Ups the ante. So if the pandemic hadn't happened, you would be in Japan right now, yeah?
I would be, because I was to go this fall, and but obviously that's not going to happen. I'm not sure when I'll go back again. I'm hoping to go back a year from now.
Yeah, that would be great. So I threw out the word pandemic. We're all running on marbles, so to speak, right now. And I know there's going to be so many band directors watching this, going words of wisdom from the master. What kind of thoughts do you have about what we're into and what can happen and how we can make our bands live and culture and so forth?
We have lots of very good friends, very close friends here in Colorado Springs that are all band directors. Mm-hmm. And some of them are quite young. Some of them have been in the profession for a while, but we're all suffering the same dilemma. Let's face it, we all love our kids, our students. We love being in front of them.
Yes.
And to miss that connection is really tough, is really hard. And I don't know whether you remember the first clinic that I did at Midwest Clinic in 1989. It was called Podium Personality.
Yep.
And for me, what I think is one of the key ingredients right now for all directors, not just the young directors, is that somehow through the availability that we have through technology, that we have to maintain a great connection. I'm talking about personal connection.
Right.
Forget about music. I mean, I'm talking about just personally, because for many students, that personal connection is the most important thing in their life.
Yep.
In their student life and in their personal life. So I think that whatever connection we have and how we can do that, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom or however, that we have to come across as being extremely positive, unbelievably energetic, and with great creativity in how we can promote our art of going forward in this pandemic in a very special way. I have to relate, of course, none of the church services are met in person. Everything's online, our church here in Colorado Springs. What we're now into our 20th week of having just online services. And the thing that I am most impressed about is the way that our minister stands on the pulpit in our church, which seats about 1,500 people at a time. And the way that he delivers a sermon, you would swear that all 1,500 people are seated in front of him. And he's getting the kind of feedback from them, the same way that we get feedback from our students, that because his energy and his delivery is incredible, just incredible. I'm so impressed. And I think we have to be able to do the same thing with whatever technique that we use technology-wise. We have to make sure that the students feel that energy, because without that face-to-face connection, it's really tough. But we have to do it.
So on a 1 to 10 scale, communication would be what?
10.
Amen.
And listen, in our teaching, in our conducting, in our work with our students, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. I don't care what we do with our arms. I don't care what we do with our body. But if our connection and how we teach, how we express what the music is and how we try to get the music out of the kids, it's meaningless. And that's one of the things I wanted to share this morning is this: how do we teach our students to do that? How do we learn to do that? I think we have a terrific opportunity right now in this pandemic to be able to do some new things that I think our students miss. For example, we teach our students really well how to play notes and why they should play the notes really well, because we've got a concert, we've got a festival, we've got a contest, but are we really teaching our students what we're teaching them, how they listen? In other words, when they listen to another group, when they listen, do they listen in a way that is going to help them perceive and instill in them the joy of music for the rest of their life? How do we do that in this pandemic? I say, okay, there's a couple of ways. I'm sure that everybody's mentioned, well, this is an opportune time for chamber music, that we can put together a chamber ensemble through Zoom. And we've seen that. I've watched it on YouTube many times. But here's the thing. I was doing this when I was a young teacher with every band that I had in Iowa, that every student in the band, they didn't have a choice. They had to be in a small ensemble. Every student to the last clarinet player. Okay, same thing should be happening right now. Clarinet quartets, brass quintets, every ensemble, make it up. But here you can put 4 or 5 students together on Zoom with interaction with a teacher and have a great opportunity for continuing to play and to build skills of playing with just a few people, not a whole ensemble of 60. Yeah. This is such a training tool for our young people. And so I believe in it. I believe in that should be done. There's a lot of, I've talked to several composers in the past month. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to flex, what they call flex pieces, right? Where they're writing pieces that can be played by any size of ensemble for any instrumentation. In my first teaching job, I wish I would have had those kind of pieces, because with my 16 kids with 5 drummers and no clarinets, it didn't work very well with most of the stuff published. But I think that this is a great opportunity to do that. Now, to follow that up, I think that let's invite our band kids. Like I say, we're teaching them how to play notes really well, but let's invite our band students to be adjudicators. Mm-hmm. This is part of the lesson plan. I'm going to send my students a recording of some band playing this piece, and I'm going to send them an email, a judge's sheet with all the things that we work for: intonation, balance, blend, etc., phrasing. And I'm going to ask my students to listen to this performance, and I want them to judge that band. It's great. It's a great idea. Because now we're really teaching our students how to listen, or what are we listening for? Are we listening for tone quality? Are we listening for attacks and releases? Are we really hearing what we're playing and how that relates and how we relate to the people we're playing with? So I think that I want my students to become adjudicators. I want them to listen and to evaluate what they're hearing. Let's face it, Tim, I sometimes go to concerts, and what I would like to do is I like to put a screen right behind the conductor so that I can't see the conductor, mm-hmm. so that all that I do is listen. And I'll often go to concerts, and there will be times in a concert where I will actually close my eyes and not watch the conductor, but only listen. And in Japan, at the national contest, they have, it's a whole different mechanism for adjudication. Our judges in this country, we all get scores, and they have to be published, and we sit there and we look at the score, and And if they're 4 clicks per minute off the beat, we comment on that. And if the dynamic isn't exactly what it says here, we comment on. In other words, we focus so much on what the note and what the score is saying, we forget to really listen to the group. And I want my students to learn to listen. But in Japan, the judges there, like in the national contest, they have 9 judges. Nobody has a score. Nobody has a judge sheet. Nobody has a recording device. The judges sit there like this and listen. And each judge has a runner. And at the end of every performance, they tell the runner it's either going to be gold, silver, or copper. And they run backstage, and then that names judge for that band, they put down gold, silver, or copper. So nobody knows who gets the gold until after that set. And then all the judges go backstage and they look at all the talent. And then they agree then to draw the line here. Golds will go down here, silvers will be here, coppers will be here. I was invited to judge one of those contests a few years ago. It's totally different, totally different. And I'll have to admit, you focus more on the actual listening. So I think this is an opportunity. What I'm trying to say is for our kids and for our directors, our young directors, to really help our students become good listeners, because all of their life in music, they're going to be listening.
That's brilliant. Oh man, I hope everybody picked up on that. That's enough to keep you going for a semester right there with
Well, it is.
a good lesson plan.
I want to follow that up with another quote class kind of idea.
Yeah.
How many of our band students in public schools know anything about band history? Have they ever heard of the Joliet Band and A.R. McAllister?
Ooh, yeah.
Have they ever heard of what Harry Beechan did when he was a high school teacher? Or going on and on. So I think this is a great opportunity to introduce a little bit of band history to our students as we're online and talking to them. Students should know that. How about this? How about teaching a little bit about the history of women band directors in our profession, where that started? Do they know Helen Mae Butler?
Right.
That she had one of the most popular bands that toured the United States at the same time as John Philip Sousa,
Yes.
and was invited to the White House many times to perform for presidents? People don't know. In other words, I think there's a great opportunity. Or even go into composers. Do our band students know who were the leaders in African American composers for band?
Yes.
Who were they? Right now, and with what we're going through around the country, it seems like an important thing to do, to make that kind of an introduction. So those kind of things I think are really important that we can add to the quote curriculum that we're going through right now in the pandemic.
Well, the landscape's open for some creative thinking, and I mean, right there, my gosh, because we say we never have time for that.
Yeah, now we do.
Now we do. Yeah.
And the directors have time. They have time.
Absolutely.
Because now we're not pushed to put together a quote concert or prepare for a festival, or in I don't know about Indiana, but in Colorado, all the marching activities have been canceled for the fall.
Indiana too.
Here's what I think, here's another aspect that I think we have to be considered and be creative about is, I feel really bad for the upperclassmen, particularly the seniors.
Yeah.
Both last spring, where they did not get a graduation, they didn't get to do a festival, they didn't get to do all of the things that normal seniors get to do. It's going to be the same thing this year for the upperclassmen. How do we encourage them to keep them motivated to continue in music and to be a participant in music? Well, it has to be online. It has to be through what kind of creative way we can do that as teachers online.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an opportunity here. I mean, again, Great ideas. I'm going to take a pivot on you, Mr. Cramer. You talked about the clinic you did at Midwest. The pass out was in red ink, I remember.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Very good.
No, it's great. I loved it. One page red ink, bullet, 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 bullet was like that. Your students, of course, they honor you. I mean, they revere you. But all of them that I've gotten to know and talk to, they talk about the Cramer family, that they were a member of the Cramer family. Could you just give us a couple minutes about what that means?
Uh, you know, every place we've been, both, you know, Molly has been a part of what I do. And people ask my wife, they say, Molly, we assume that you're a good musician yourself. And she goes, no, not really, but I'm an applauder.
That's good.
I go to everything my husband does, and I applaud everything he does. But what she really means is this, that she has become the ultimate band mother.
Yeah.
And she's been a part of whatever program from high school, even at the university.
Yes.
There were many Thanksgivings in Bloomington that there was always innumerable students that could not go home for Thanksgiving. So I can remember Thanksgivings where she would prepare dinners for 30 or 40 college students who would come to our house and have Thanksgiving dinner, spend the afternoon, play Monopoly. I mean, we had all kinds of games going. Molly would finally say about midnight, I'm sorry, you guys, I have to go to bed. You have to go home, you know?
Yeah.
But we always included the students in our family activities, especially when we had children. That we had college students that would vie to babysit for us.
Ah.
And it's amazing how close our kids got to some of our college students. So yes, we always treated, and by the way, our kids always went to activities at the school, you know, at the university with the concerts or whatever. And when I was doing the pep band for the basketball games, they sat in the pep band. They got to know all the kids, 90 kids in the pep band. And so it very much became a family activity. But I think that that also spoke to how the students felt like I interacted with them. I treated them like they were part of my family, how I would want people to treat my kids. You know, we're all very, you know, we want people to treat us well, treat my kids well. So I want to treat my kids well.
Yeah, obviously. And it just all reflects, again, from the person who's on the podium. And in your case, Molly's always right beside you, which is rarely have I seen the separation. Rarely. And then, but she's right behind you then somewhere hidden.
Absolutely.
She's a sweetheart. As we start to pull this towards the end here, I do want to ask you a question because you're one of our consumer clinicians, which we're so proud of, to be real honest. What do you see, Mr. Cramer, in terms of the importance right now, and this may be a soft pitch, of education and industry working together closely?
You know, that's a really great question right now. And because, you know, I have grandkids that are kind of spread around. In fact, my son, who did live in Colorado Springs for many years, they have twin daughters, but the last 4 years, have been teaching in Buenos Aires, but they're now moving to Dubai. And then I have grandkids in Albuquerque. The point is this: one of the twins, my son's twins, one of them is playing percussion, and the other one is playing trombone. So I've been giving online lessons, which has been fun. And here's the thing: it's interesting. After 55 years, I dug my horns out, and I've started to practice again, which I think says something about the pandemic that we're in right now. I think directors who have been fine players in the past who have given up the horn, it's time to get the horn out and rediscover how difficult it is to work on exercises, to work on tone, to work on lip slurs, to work. That's what I've had to do. I've had to reteach myself. In other words, I talk to myself every day. Okay, Cramer, more air, open up the throat. Now, to pull that into your question, it's really interesting because the young lady, my son's daughter, who's going to Dubai, they have told her, you need to buy an instrument and bring with you because they're so expensive in Dubai to buy an instrument. So they've been shopping around. And so I've told them, I said, here's what you need to investigate. You need to look at companies that have great products, that have a great tradition and history. And I says, Conn-Selmer is one of them. I said, there are all kinds of choices there where you can buy a trombone that would be a student line trombone that is well made, well put together, that you need to consider. So that's what they've been doing the last couple of weeks in California. They've been going to these music stores and trying out these trombones. And so I think it's important that what you provide in the way of industry, not only in the instruments, but also what you're doing through the educational process, is unlike anything that has happened for years and years in our profession. And so I salute the company, for Conn-Selmer, for maintaining this contact with directors, not only in the quality of the instrument and the product, but of the whole educational process of what that means to our profession.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship.
Definitely is.
1 + 1 = 7.
Yeah, that comment you just made, I remember years ago, this would have been about 1966, my wife and I went with a Oak Park River Forest Orchestra to Europe to tour for a month. A good friend was the orchestra director, and the assistant conductor of the orchestra was the band director who I went to school with at Iowa. And so we went with them, but the director had a great comment that he shared with his orchestra kids, which I've never forgotten. And that's just what you said, that in music, as opposed to science and math, 2 + 2 in math was always going to be 4. But in music, 2 + 2 is never going to equal 4. It's going to equal 6 or 7 or 8, depending on how you put the 2 + 2 together.
Yes.
And that's what we have to remember.
Yes. What makes us
we
different?
we want to equal more
Yes.
than what we think the sum total is going to be.
Yes. It's great teachers like you. I have 2 favors to ask of you, and then we'll let you rest. One is, be sure to tell Molly I said hello and I love her and thank you. And the angel is on the top of our Christmas tree every year that she.
Well, we always enjoy getting together when you finally make it to Colorado Springs for more than an hour that we can go to Edelweiss for dinner. Have a good dinner.
Birthday dinners. Thank you. And the second one is, would you please come back again on Backstage and let us continue this conversation? There's so much richness there.
I'd love to, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. And I hope that the young directors that are listening can pick up on a couple of things that'll make them think about how they might approach this very difficult time. And I really do feel for them. Yeah. I just think how difficult it is, and not only for the high school directors and middle school directors. This same problem is going over into the universities as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, if I had to approach my university, if I were still teaching and not be able to see my students every day in rehearsal, I would just go, it might give me gray hair. Oh, wait, I forget it already did.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thanks for being a part of our Conn-Selmer family. Thanks to all of you who had the opportunity to hear Mr. Cramer in action, and you know why he's who he is, and he's very humble about it. So you make such a difference, my friend. Again, love to the family. We'll see you next time around too.
Thank you, Tim, and you keep up your good work as well.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Cramer. Thanks to all of you. Blessings.
Bye.